Welcome, everybody, to another Exit the Maze podcast. I'm your co-host, Scott Jones, along with Dr. Donna Marks, and we want to thank everybody for joining us today and remind you that if you like this show, please subscribe to the channel and share this show with your friends. We would appreciate that. Donna, how are you today?
Doing very well, thank you. And you?
I'm doing fine. You look beautiful as always. And
thank you.
How's the family?
Everyone's great. I was out of town for a few days with my daughter, Hannah, and my granddaughter, Beta, and we had the best time in Sedona, Arizona.
No, wait a minute. How old is your granddaughter now?
She's 10 months.
And she's already out traveling the world with you guys.
Oh, yeah.
How does she handle all the traveling? How does she handle the traveling in the airplanes and stuff?
Well, I didn't fly to Arizona with her, only coming back, and it was like almost a 5-hour flight, and she was fine.
Wow.
We kept her entertained.
That's better than I am. Well, that's terrific. That's terrific. Now, everybody knows, I mean, you've certainly, we're basing this show on your book, Exit the Maze. And it's got, I just want to kind of remind people, you've got a second version of the book coming out in just about 4 months or so. Or 5 months. What exactly is the change in the book that you were making?
Well, it won 23 book awards, and a publisher picked it up. So they, in order to revise it, we had to add about 20 to 25 pages is what it boils down to. So I added some information. Every time someone writes a book, there's always things they wish they would have said. So I added to that, and then I gave some more examples, because one of the things that people keep saying when they read my blogs every week or my book is, I love the examples. I can relate to examples. It gives me a picture, and that's so much better than just blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, so I think that's important. A lot of people don't do that, and I think it's important to put information into everyday processes or everyday things that happen, so that people can understand how things work.
Yes.
I know you do that. You spend a lot of time thinking that way, don't you?
Right. Well, in education, which is what, my training is in counseling and education, and, tell, show, do. So I do describe the situations of how to exit the maze of addiction. And to understand addiction. A lot of people are addicted and they don't have any idea that they are. Either they don't want to know or they don't realize it. And things are made to get us addicted. So it's very easy to get addicted to something and not even realize that we are. And then we go through, like years and years and years of coming on and off of it and struggling with it and trying this and trying that, and moderating and backing off and engaging again. And whether it's relationships or sex or drugs or food, it doesn't matter. And so I help people to understand that it's not anything wrong with them. It's something that happened to them, but we do want to reclaim ourselves. So I explain that from the, technical, the writing part. And then I showed them through the case histories, people who could or couldn't exit the maze and why they did or why they didn't, and why they were successful or not. And then there's exercises at the end of each chapter so they can do it themselves. So it's a tell, show, do model, which we all learn best from that type of model, explaining it and then sharing how someone else does it, or demonstrating how to do it and then having the person do it themselves.
Absolutely. And this kind of work is really, people know it's personal to me and it's personal to you. It's important to us. It can be heartbreaking and rewarding all at the same time, working, especially with addictions, right?
Well, with any kind of behavior change, it doesn't even have to be addiction. It could be someone who's just not happy with their lives. And so here's the map, and here's how you can do this or that. And it's amazing how few people will actually do what it takes to get the result they say they want.
Is that a matter of not wanting it bad enough, or is it sometimes a matter of just not having enough faith in yourself?
Well,
maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah, well, as I explain them in the book, we each have like what I call, a Holy Spirit, but I teach A Course in Miracles, but I just say, just call it your conscience. It's that internal navigator. And then we also have this ego that says, I don't pay any attention to that, do it this way, do it that way, da 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 da. So that kind of keeps us, going like this, rather than, being able to just exit the maze and be out of it and enjoy your life now. It's kind of human nature to addiction is about listening to that voice that's not the right voice, the
Yeah.
ego's voice, which is always, fear. I won't be happy if I don't have this, if I don't do that. Or maybe, I don't have to really just totally do it that way. I can do it this way. And that's why, again, the difference between success or failure or relearning. I don't like the word failure. I like to say, relearning.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And we've talked a lot about, processes that happen when you're getting into treatment and trying to get sober and doing all that. One of the things that we haven't really talked about very much was about maintaining recovery or maintaining, well, no, recovery could be from anything, from trauma, from mental health issues, from addictions or whatever, but maintaining a healthy moving forward. And there's a lot of things that we kind of come across. They call them triggers, apparently. Some people use the word trigger. Some people use life gets in the way and all these other things. But I'd like to address some of these things and see if we can discuss some of these kind of openly. Um, and the number one thing is learning to deal with all new emotions, which aren't actually new emotions, but we're just uncovering our emotions because we spent so much time hiding from them. And that could be very difficult for people to feel in knowing how to deal with everything from happiness to sadness, from love and joy to pain and depression. It's a really difficult thing to navigate as an adult. These are things you should learn as you grow, but in addiction, many times we don't get to grow that way, so we have to learn it as an adult. Any advice you can give to people about navigating these kind of emotions?
Well, I think the most common feeling that I see with people early in recovery is anger. It's like you've been asleep and you wake up and you see what's going on around you.
Yes.
And that's one part of it, and the other part of the anger is like we haven't learned how to cope with it, and learn how to handle our anger in a productive and more mature way. So the first time that things start going wrong, which have been going wrong all along, you're like, ah. Because you're not medicating. You're not like, oh, I'll have my milkshake or I'll have my whiskey or I'll have, go shopping or whatever. So, so you're really aware. And since you're not medicating your feelings and your brain is getting back to normal, you're feeling all these new feelings. Same thing with sadness. Maybe you were really sad when you started your addictions. And, now that you're not medicating that sorrow, you're really having to face it and it doesn't feel good. And sometimes people are very depressed and that's why they were using whatever they were using. And so we really need to feel our feelings. And again, I bring it back to childhood. If a little kid's angry, they just get it out. If they're sad, they just cry. And now we teach them it's not okay to throw their toy at us. We say, put it into words. I'm angry because, and get it out. And the same thing with crying. We give them a hug and allow them to cry, and then it's over with. But when we haven't been doing that, and we get sober as adults, whether in our 20s or 60s, or sometimes older, here all of a sudden are these emotions that we haven't learned how to regulate and be comfortable with, and just understand it's part of being human. And then we try to, get rid of them as quickly as possible. That's why people usually just go from one addiction to the next.
Right, right, absolutely. Let me acknowledge Lynn Serrano's with us, saying hello, beautiful friends. Hello, Lynn. Thanks for joining us.
So nice that she's consistently coming in to visit our program.
Yes, absolutely. I actually caught part of when she had a program on earlier today, and I caught part of that, and that was very enjoyable. But podcasters, we try to support each other out there in the world, and if you're watching or listening to this, please comment and let us know what you think or ask questions, whatever you'd like. Now,
We also want guests.
and guests, absolutely. We would love to have a guest on sometime soon. We should set that up. Now, with these emotions too, though, I think sometimes people get a false sense that I should never feel bad. I should never feel sad or melancholy or even just a little depressed. And I'm fairly well adjusted in the world today, after many years of having to work on myself. And yet I still have moments of where I just feel a little off or something. But we sometimes forget that's part of our humanness too, that we're not always going to feel good. And it's okay to have that. Is that accurate?
Well, your feelings are just like anything else. If you notice that you haven't eaten breakfast and it's 10 or 11, and your stomach and your mind is saying I'm hungry, and you actually are hungry, you don't just say, "Oh, that's terrible," let's get rid of that hunger. So if you're feeling these emotions, there's probably a reason for it. And sometimes when I'm a little off, I just have to get still and be quiet and figure out what it is. What's bugging me? What is it? And what can I do about it? And sometimes I can't do anything right now. Sometimes I can do something, but sometimes I just need to feel. When my therapist died, that was one of the hardest things I've ever been through, and I just still sometimes I'll just be thinking about her, and I'll just let myself be sad even though it's been a couple years. So it's important that we do understand that we just have these human emotions, and ignoring them or stifling them or stuffing them will only make things worse. They ultimately can trigger us. The other part of that is that the support system will often say things like, "I liked you better when you were drunk," or "I liked you better when you were heavy," or "I liked it better when you were, doing your thing," whatever it was. I liked it better when you're working all the time and you weren't around so much. These are like really dangerous triggers, because then the person, the ego said, what's the point? Well, you're the point. You're the point. And sometimes, here's what's going to happen. Three things are going to happen with a relationship. Either the person who's in recovery will continue to be provoked, or supported. That's one thing. If they're provoked, then sometimes the relationship, one person growing and the other person not, they go like this.
Yeah.
They'll grow apart. Or the other thing is that they're going to relapse. They're going to relapse, because they'll say, "Yeah, you're right. It was much better when I was just mellowed out all the time, and now I'm angry and I'm sad and I'm agitated and I'm uptight." And rather than learning how to get the tools to experience those emotions in a healthy way, between their own not liking it and the partner, or the support system not liking them anymore, you really have to realize that this is a recipe for relapse. And so the third thing is you can say, "You know what, I'm going through a tough time. I don't know what it's like to be human. I don't know what it's like to be sober. I don't know what it's like to live without this drug, whatever it is, shopping, sex, alcohol, cigarettes, food, whatever. But I'm going to learn how. I can do this. I know I can do it because I see other people that are doing it. And so I know I can do it, and I will do it. And I like the challenge. I like it."
That's excellent. And just because we're comfortable with something does not mean it's good for us, because we will make bad things comfortable. And so, like you said, I don't like you so much this way. I'm used to you the other way. It's just my habit is developed around something that's not healthy. It's not good. It doesn't mean it's good because it's comfortable. So I want people to know that. But you're mentioning you brought relationships into it, and there's a biggie right there in early recovery, that stumbles a lot of people, is understanding their roles in relationships. Um, I know from my own personal experience, I spent a lot of years in relationships where I was dependent upon how they felt about me to determine how I felt about myself. So it became like I was like an emotional vampire. I have to get all my feelings and everything from this other person. So my relationships were not healthy for a long time. And a lot of people struggle through that. If you don't know yourself, you're going to gain your sense of self from the things around you or the people around you. Um, but I also don't want to limit people by saying no relationships for a year or something like that, because I don't think an arbitrary statement of time is the answer either, is it?
Well, I think the goal is to learn how to be comfortable in your own skin.
Right.
And you can do that in a relationship or out of a relationship. You can do it by being alone and living alone and learning how to take care of yourself and your basic health needs and survival needs and social and emotional needs. Or you can do that in a relationship. And how you do that in a relationship is recognize when you're angry with someone or sad with someone or uncomfortable with someone, that those triggers are trying to tell you that there's a taproot associated to those reactions. And you can work on that root, which always goes back in time. Maybe you were betrayed. Maybe you don't know how to be alone. So when someone, you know, says they're going away for a week, you freak out, or maybe you have a separation anxiety from your parents leaving you unattended or alone or with people that didn't care properly for you. Whatever the case may be, you learn how to be comfortable in your own skin. And you can, like I said, you can do that in a relationship or not. I think what happens very frequently is that people just kind of find their, you know, complacency in a relationship. And if you live alone too long and you don't have relationships to move you along, so to speak, you become complacent. And then when something really rocks your boat, like a death of a partner, or all of a sudden you're in a relationship when you're used to being alone, that can really stir things up too. So it's important to say, rather than run away from it, say, this is a challenge and I like it. I'm going to grow from this.
Well, you made an
I'm recently
interesting.
working with a gentleman who is in a relationship, and he's always had all the control. And now he's with someone who's really healthy, and now he's experiencing the anxiety of, what do you mean you're going, without me, kind of thing. And so, but he's saying, I'm being challenged. I'm being challenged, and I'm up for the challenge. I want to grow. So all this stuff from early on is coming up. So that's really common and typical. And if you're up for the challenge, great. I'm not saying you're wrong not to be. I'm just saying that if you want to feel good in your own skin, these are the challenges that we take on.
Absolutely. Lynn's saying that's a great point. I agree with you. But it's even in relationships that aren't based in addiction or something else, in a normal relationship, it kind of goes against the grain what you were saying about when you start to come up against something, you examine yourself and your own past about why that's doing that for me. When you're in a relationship, a lot of times, even in fairly healthy relationships, the first thing we do is figure out, what are they doing wrong. We look, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm uncomfortable, so you must be doing something wrong here. And that's a hard habit to break, isn't it? Just for everyday people, that's a hard habit to break.
Yeah, communicating in a healthy way is it's not all that easy to do. The other night, I was upset with someone who was like on the phone for an hour, and I was waiting for that person. I knew I was waiting for them, and so I just finally just said, forget it, which is not the healthiest way to handle it. And I'm talking to my daughter on the phone, and she's like, I just tell him to get the F off the phone. These are kind of like two extremes, And I said, well, that's the healthier method than mine, which is just, go on about my business. The healthiest thing is to, lovingly and calmly address it. You said you were going to be on the phone for a few minutes, and it was an hour.
Right.
It's been a half hour, but my only child syndrome kicks in. It's like, I don't, it's uncomfortable for me to do that. So
Yeah.
my challenge is to find my voice and to speak up.
That's
Whereas hers is to back off a little bit.
That's very interesting. You get two different approaches. One is just to walk away and just, okay, I guess we're not going to do that. I
Right.
guess it's just not have. And
Right.
your daughter will walk in with scissors and cut the phone cord.
Right.
It's like, you said 10 minutes, you've got 10 minutes. There you go. You're right, and it's difficult to find those ways to communicate with people. I wonder if that's got a lot to do with also our do I actually have a voice in certain matters? And I know that certainly with me, there's certain things that trigger me to a point where like you said, it is kind of like, well, I guess it's just is. I just got to let it go. It just is what it is. And I don't feel like I have a voice there. Some of that is our own self-confidence and the belief that we should have a voice, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes, it can be that, but it can also be patterns of behavior that are not that easy to break because it's
Right.
uncomfortable. It's just uncomfortable.
Gotcha.
In other words, it's not necessarily low self-esteem, but it's really uncomfortable to break patterns of behavior that are not serving us.
Right. Well, I grew up in two different worlds. When I was a child, when people yelled, things got broke, people would leave, bad things would happen, things would end. And then I ended up married for a very long time to a woman whose whole family was, we yell and scream at each other all the time, and that's how we care about each other. So I was always lost in the middle of this thing where I'm afraid to yell and scream because that's the end of the world. And I'm afraid not to, then I'm afraid to become comfortable with it. It's very strange. So the dynamics when you're getting in a relationship, you're not, what's the old saying? You're not just marrying one person, you're marrying their whole family. That's kind of true in a way. You're marrying their whole
Well,
cultural background
that
and
could
their
be
whole familial
any,
background.
yeah, that could be any relationship. It could be the
Yeah.
relationship with your doctor. It could be a professional relationship. It could be a romantic relationship. It could be a friendship relationship. I think that a lot of people resist addressing problems because when they do and nothing changes, they're not heard. Then they have to face whether or not this is a workable situation or not. And the fear underneath sometimes of really addressing conflicts is that what if nothing changes? What if
Yeah.
it stays the same? And this is not something that will work for me. Then they tend to be silent. Of course, it's not going to work either that way, but it prolongs it. It prolongs the death of the inevitable.
I think I always carried the fear that if I spoke up, things would be done and over.
Yeah, yeah,
And I was always afraid of that. I was always, well, it's better for me to just swallow what I'm feeling to preserve the relationship.
right, right. But also, if
Not
you do,
realizing what I'm preserving is a very unhealthy thing.
right, but if you do speak up and you're not heard, that
Yeah,
is
that's hard
doubly
too.
hurtful. Doubly hurtful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So these were all obviously just talking about relationships. We're not even bringing addiction into this mess. A relationship itself is a very difficult thing to navigate
Right.
unless
It's
you've
so
got a
much easier
good,
to just stay
without
high
a
all
good
the
sense
time.
of self. Yeah. Yeah. What we're telling you, everybody, is live alone. Just no. Um, so knowing that this is a difficult navigation for the healthiest of people, because you have to do a lot of introspection and you have to think a lot about,
Work.
what you're bringing to the table and what your perspective is, because you're carrying your own experiences with you. Going into this in early recovery could be a real pitfall because it's a lot to juggle when you're just learning about yourself. So maybe that's why they suggest to wait a while. Is that, you think that's what they're going with that?
I think that the main reason people say wait before you have a relationship is because breakups are the number one trigger for relapse.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really painful to get rejected when you're 3 or 4 or 5, 6 months sober.
Yeah.
Really painful.
Yeah. I know a lot of people say when you're first in recovery, if you want to learn how to have relationships, start with a pet. Because then you've got somebody you got to care for and you take care of you and them, and the focus
Right.
is still on you.
And
So, and that's
they're
where
going
it's,
to take care of you. They're going to do what they do. And sometimes they'll be,
especially if it's a cat, they don't
yeah,
give you nothing but attitude. At least
right,
dogs will come up and lick you.
right. They want attention, right? Cats don't
Some,
care.
something else that's a really big trigger in early recovery for a lot of people is the one thing, and this one drives me crazy. It's boredom. They can't find excitement anywhere, and boredom doesn't mean they have nothing to do. Boredom means that they're not deriving any joy from what they are doing, um or
Right.
of course they have nothing to do. But you know that one drives me really crazy, Donna, because I'm like, I just keep using the term, people who get bored are boring people. There's always something you can be doing and something you can be discovering. Boredom is, to me, is just a lazy way of saying I don't want to do anything. I don't want to try.
Well, that's a
Maybe that's
real.
a little harsh. I don't know.
No, I agree with you 100%. Any relationship after a while is going to get boring a little bit. So you have to
Yeah.
switch it up. You have to try new things. You have to move outside of the relationship to replenish it. It's like water, it gets stagnant and you have to have fresh water running through it there.
Yeah.
And I don't mean go have affairs. That's not what I'm saying. But other interests, hobbies, and if you're in recovery, go to different meetings, or go to meetings that you normally wouldn't go to, or add an extra meeting, or make plans with your friends outside of the relationship, and take separate little mini vacations and with other members of the family, things that are safe and healthy, not acting out types of things. And that
Certainly.
keeps the relationship fresh water moving through it, so it doesn't become stagnant.
Well, what if it's just you? Let's take the relationship out and put you in early recovery by yourself. You go into meetings and everything else, but you got this sense of, and a lot of them, because they derive so much of their excitement from the chemical reaction in their brains from the drugs and the alcohol, which we understand. We can go into that on a whole nother show.
Right.
But
And you get that when you first go to meetings. This is all new, and what a high, and I'm learning. And
yes, but then they get home and 5 minutes of boredom to them is like the end of the world.
right.
And maybe that's impatience. Maybe it's, I don't know, but I really, there's so many things people can be doing.
Right. Well, if you're bored in a meeting, there's one solution: raise your hand. Raise your hand.
Yeah. Put
You
yourself
can't
out
just
there.
sit there and take, day after day after day, and then look around the room, and this one, and I don't like it here, and complain, and I'm not getting anything out of this. Well, put something into it. Chair a meeting, or lead a meeting, or sign up for coffee, or go around and help the cleanup person. Put something into it, and you won't be so bored. And when you get home, there's so many things we can do that first few years of recovery: journaling, learning how to meditate, going outside of the rooms into, yoga and exercise and meditation groups, and all kinds of things you can do to keep yourself growing and entertained.
I always encourage people, think back to when you were a kid. You always wanted to learn piano. Now's a great time to pick up a little keyboard and do that.
Yes. And didn't you
Or
do
learn
that?
guitar. What?
Didn't you really master your art and guitar lessons when you got in
I
your recovery?
Yes, absolutely. Music was a huge part of my recovery, and
Like a
just
higher power.
listening to me. Yes, listening to music, playing music, writing music, singing. It meant a lot. And now adding art into that and finding new discoveries about ourselves. We've got this whole unexplored universe right here ourselves. And to try to, instead of just putting limits on it, think about the possibilities and try different things. Listen, you might pick up a pen and paper and decide to write a novel. Turn out you can't write 3 sentences to save your life, but try, because you don't know until you try it.
Right.
And then you're going to find out I was doodling on the side of the paper instead of writing, but the doodling was fun. Now I'm an artist, not a writer. Find out about yourself. Did you have discoveries that you made about yourself that were almost shocking to you?
Well, I wasn't planning on writing 3 or 4 books, that's for sure. And it looks like I'm going to be writing some more. But it's evolved into something I really love doing. And you get better at it, the more coaching you get and things like that. And so, I remember some of the first things I would send to my editor, and it would be like, and now it's like no edits. And that feels really good. And but there's just so much to learn, and so much to do to tap into our spirit, our creative side, and to be able to feel like we are self-expressed, and giving other people something as well. When you play music, when you paint, when you write, you are giving back. You're giving back pieces of yourself. And that is very gratifying.
Absolutely. And it's just so, I wish we could treat ourselves almost as we do children, when we're saying try it. Try that piece of broccoli on the plate, or what you want to paint, then grab some paints, and anything you make is beautiful because it came from you. And we can tell children all those things, but then when we're looking at ourselves in the mirror, none of those things come to mind, do they?
Well, you can make a list, a bucket list, and if,
That's a good
learning
idea.
how to play the piano is on there, or learning how to paint, there are plenty of places you can go learn how to do that. And a lot of, I think every single county has, a cultural center, an art place, or music place where you can tap into learning how to, and you don't have to be, Mozart. Even if you just learn how to play a few songs, you have done something on your bucket list.
Not to mention, if you go to a meeting and say, I'd really like to learn guitar, does anybody here play? You get 3 or 4
There you
people all
go.
raising their hands. I
There
know
you
when I
go.
first moved down here from New York, I didn't know anybody. I went to a meeting and I said, I'd like to get to know some people. I like to play golf. Anybody out there? And next thing I know, I had 3 weekends booked in a row and I met a bunch of new people and it was great. So, boredom is simply just the idea that you don't extend yourself at all. If you extend yourself a little bit, you'll find something to do. And not to mention the fact, Donna, I mean, we shouldn't ignore the fact that sometimes a little solitude and a little silence is a good thing. And maybe we
A
should learn to
lot
be
of it's
okay with
good.
that, right?
A lot of it's good. There should be a balance, like a seesaw between time alone and time with, and that is really, really important. Just like anything else, you aren't eating 24 hours a day. You have that balance of
Yeah.
eating nutritious food at the right times of day when your body needs to recharge. And so, same thing with relationships. You definitely need that interaction, not to isolate. That's dangerous. That's a big trigger. And we have to remember, our addiction wants to cause problems, and our addiction wants us to get mad and go away and
Yeah.
separate us from other people and from love. And then what's the point? Might as well get high again, because at least I was having fun, or so my addiction tells me. Lots of fun, making myself sick, having hangovers, DUIs, lots of fun.
Never a dull moment. Debbie Bettendorf joins us, says, hi, Scott and Donna. She has a great show. It's on tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern time. It's called Find It. It's a great podcast. But anyway,
Find it. It's called Find It. Is
Find
it
It.
on
Yes,
Discovery, or?
Find It. Whatever you're looking for, find it. And
Oh,
it's just she has a lot of great guests on, talks about a lot of things. I should hook you up. They'll probably love to have you as a guest on some of these shows there, Donna.
okay.
Um,
I'm happy to be on them.
then and I want to say something else I want to think about, we've all had those chaotic times, whether it was during our addictions or during difficult times in our lives, whatever your difficulty may have been, where we've said, I just want a moment of peace. I just want everybody to leave me alone for a few minutes. And then when we get that moment of peace, we have a little space to ourselves and some solitude and some quiet. And then we curse the quiet. Are you kidding me? This is what we beg for. I begged for moments of peace in my life, and now when I have them, I have to covet those. Those are important to me. I don't get bored when I go home and there's nobody there. I actually enjoy the solitude. I enjoy
Yeah.
the silence, and when I'm done with the silence, I turn music on, and then I enjoy the music. Stop punishing ourselves for having some peace of mind. It's
This
crazy.
is so important. I was recently talking to someone in a meeting, a professional, and he said, no matter where I go, I'm late. And I just listened, and he said, yeah, I just, it seems like, I'll be telling myself now, you need to leave in 10 minutes so you won't be late. And then I'll look at my watch and I'm already late. And it was very easy to figure out what his problem was. Do you know what it might have been?
No, I don't.
He didn't want to be anywhere. He was pulled so thin, and he had
Oh,
no time for himself between the family and work and gym, and his go 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 go. He was always late because he didn't want to be anywhere. So I said, well, why don't you try taking more time for yourself, even if it's really uncomfortable, and see if you might be able to even arrive 5 minutes early to some of these events. And he was like, oh my God, oh my God, that's so true. Like, I'm so on the go all the time. I always have to be someplace. I either have to be in court, or I have to be here, or I have to be there, take the kids, pick them up. And I'm overwhelmed.
I think
30
everybody
years
needs that.
sober, by the way. He was 30 years sober.
30 years sober, but still, we still can fall into these traps
Never got out
of
of them.
overwhelming ourselves or doing something like that. And
Well,
I'm
that
telling
could be
you,
an addiction, just staying
oh,
sober
yeah.
is easy if you don't have to stop, think, and feel.
Debbie would love to have you as a guest on one of her shows. I'll set you
Great.
guys up so you guys can be in contact with each
Thank
other.
you.
Definitely. I think a lot of this comes down to, loneliness kind of goes along with the boredom too, that a lot of people
Yeah.
feel lonely. But Listen, I've been lonely in a group of people that love me to death, and I've still been a lonely. I've also been completely by myself and not even close to feeling lonely at all.
Hmm.
Lonely has got nothing to do with the people around you. It's got to do with how you view what you have in your
How you
life.
show up.
Yes. Yes. They don't have to be in front of you to be a part of you. I think we always think we need to be fully entertained at all times in order to be fulfilled, and that's not the truth. All of these things, whether it's boredom or loneliness or even struggling with your emotions, it's about just being present in your moment and being okay with where you're at. You know?
Well, if I'm at home alone, lonely, I have a phone with about 500 contacts in it. And I can
Exactly.
start going through that and call people and see how they're doing. See if they need anything. See if they'd like to talk for a little while. See if I could pick up something for them. See if I could take them to a meeting. See if we could talk business. I mean, that's one thing. Another thing is when I am with people, sometimes my mind will sit there and judge and evaluate everybody. And, oh, I'm not interested in this conversation. And, I don't have any, can't relate to these people. And that happens in a meeting sometimes. And I have to, why don't you switch over to that other side of your mind for a minute and see if that works for better for you? And it always does. It always does.
Oh my God. I used to decide who I was going to listen to by the kind of shoes that they wore. I know it's a very strange thing. If they wore really ratty shoes, they had nothing they could tell me. But if they wore nice shoes, I would listen to them. We'd
What
find
kind
the
of shoes?
strangest ways to
What
engage with
kind of
people.
shoes?
What?
What kind of shoes?
Any kind of shoes. They had to be either nice. If they were nice shoes, I'd listen. But if they were dirty, like people with dirty shoes, it was always a pet peeve of mine. If you had holes in your sneakers, or they just like your shoes weren't polished properly, I
Right,
wouldn't listen to
right.
them.
What about barefoot? I'm just teasing.
And flip flops, get out of here. I don't even deal with flip flop people. Okay, but that was just my way of kind of separating what I thought was the wheat from the chaff and doing all
Right.
of that.
You don't have to marry them. You only have to like
I
connect for a
know,
little
I
while.
know, I know. But how can I be lonely when I'm actually having a whole group of people that I've got to find ways to ignore? I'm not alone. I am not alone. My whole thinking had to change. And like I said, all of these things, when we're talking about things like loneliness and boredom and all these other things that we're involved in here, what are you doing to make it different? What are you doing? You're right. You can pick up the phone. You got 1,000 things that you could be doing. There's a bucket list. I'm sure you've always had, like you said, write them down, put them up on the wall, and start checking those things off. Um,
My mom's
try
in
try
assisted
writing.
living. I try to go. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Now, my mom's in assisted living. She just turned 91 last month. And so I don't always want to go see her. But once I get in the right consciousness, I feel good to go see her. It's about a 30-minute drive. And then, she doesn't even remember if I'm there or not. But I feel good about it. And this is where
Yeah.
the rubber meets the road for me. Because I would just soon not, be bothered with stuff like that. It's boring. It's boring to drive 30 minutes and sit there with someone who's not quite there. And then she's more there than anybody else because everyone else is like this on medication. But, but I can take that with me, or I can take this with me. Like, it really feels good. I don't know how many moments I have left with my
Yeah.
mom, and I'm going to feel so good that I was the one who took care of her. She did her best to take care of me. I wouldn't be here without her. And it feels good to be able to take care of her with all the things that annoy me. It doesn't matter. And I take her a little cup of coffee, and she's delighted with that simple pleasure. And I visit with her. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's an hour, but it feels great. And then I, try to spread a little cheer with some of these other people who are somewhat coherent. And, then the staff can be real, challenging at times. And I try to see past that and just, be helpful. And then, I put on good music I listen to, on the way there, on the way back, or listen to news or whatever, and it turns out to be like a 2.5 hour nice little experience. Would I rather be doing something else for those 2.5 hours? Well, my ego certainly would, but my heart is getting
Yeah.
so enriched by doing that. And that's what it means to really be growing, and recovering, doing what is right for our heart and not necessarily what that addict mind wants, all that gratification that isn't really gratifying in the long run.
That's so funny that you talk about that because it's. I was thinking along those lines of we all have experiential evidence. If we get up off of our ass and go do something, we either end up having a good time, or we find a reward in it, or we feel good about ourselves, or our hearts are warmed, or whatever. Everybody says, "Hey, we're going to go bowling Saturday morning," and it's like, "Oh, I got to get up in the morning. I got to get dressed. I got to do all that." But what I know for a fact through my own evidence, my own experiences, is that once I'm there, I'm going to laugh. I'm going to have the time of my life with these
Oh
people.
yeah, that you know a bowling group.
Well, I got friends, and we're terrible. We're terrible bowlers, but
Oh,
we
I
just find
love
a
that.
ways.
It's so much fun.
We find ways to make it interesting, and it's like
Yeah.
leaving a 7-10 split is more impressive than hitting a strike. And whoever can throw the ball the fastest, because now they got the miles per hour on the lanes, and
Oh, that's
we just
hilarious.
we just have a good time.
And
And
razzing each other
I
and
mean, there's not another sport in the world where there's actually ashtrays built into the chairs where the athletes sit. They were encouraged to smoke while they bowled. This
oh
is a
yeah,
crazy sport.
right,
This is so
right,
human, and it's
right.
always fun. But then I'll stop myself because of the one pain in the ass thing I got to do to get there.
Yeah,
You
right,
know, oh, you mean I got to stop and get gas on my way to Disney World? Well, I'm
right,
not going now because I hate to stop and get gas. I'm going to allow 1 or 2 minutes of responsibility that I have to fulfill
right.
to stop me from having a good
Yeah, if you
time.
think about the getting there, you're never going. If you just think about how you're going to feel once you're there and once you're leaving that you did go, then you'll get there.
Being able to
I
see
was
the
going
whole
to the gym
picture.
today. It was like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, just think of how good you're going to feel when you're finished with that, Orange Theory
Yeah,
workout, and you're going to be on fire, and you're going to be and
yeah,
that's what keeps us going. We can't listen to that addict because that addict is going to find something wrong with everything.
yeah, exactly. And I know what it's like to sit out and to feel regret for not making the choice to do things. So we got to bring all of that to bear. We got to bring all that to our mind to think about that and say, listen, all right. So you don't want to get up at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, but you know what? If you do, by 10 o'clock, you are smiling and laughing and having the best time of your life.
Right.
So maybe we need to do that. Stop looking for reasons to stop us
Yeah.
and start looking at
Just
all the
focus on the fun you're
possibilities
going
we
to have.
have.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a good note to leave this show on. And no matter what challenges you're facing in your early recovery, you can put up as many roadblocks as you want to joy, to growth, roadblocks to love, roadblocks to friendship, roadblocks to all of these things. You can put all those roadblocks up you want, or you could just kind of look past that and decide to be happy.
Just take the roadblock, move it aside, and keep on going.
Yes, yes. Take it to the side. Debbie's saying, all this information translates to everyone, not only addicts. Absolutely,
Oh
Debbie.
yeah. Yeah, my
This does
first book, Learn,
translate.
Grow, Forgive, I wrote that because we all get stuck in patterns of behavior, whether it's an addiction or not, and so we can either condemn ourselves and get discouraged and never change, or we can learn from our experiences and keep growing from them. And there's no such thing as a failure; it's just relearning, and then that all of a sudden we've evolved in a way spiritually that we didn't even know was spiritual.
Yeah, trust me, you don't have to be an addict to have an unhealthy relationship. We've proven that over and over again in this country and everywhere. You don't have to be an addict to know what depression or sadness might feel like, or boredom might feel like, or any of those things. But certainly, it can be a high danger zone for people with addictions,
Right.
because when all else fails, we turn back to what we know best, which is self destruction and pain and
Yes.
eventually death. So that's why we bring it around to that. But you're absolutely right. This is human life. This is life that we talk about, and anybody could. I hate to oversimplify it to a point. The saying, if you're willing to do anything it takes, anybody can be happy. Does that sound fair?
Of course. I think we're born to be happy and then things happen. And if we, we can still be as happy as we want to be by dealing with the things that happen to us. But we do have to deal with ourselves.
Oh, yes, we do. Lynn says, great show. Lynn, Debbie, and everybody else out there who's watching. I know we got a bunch of people out there watching because I can see the numbers popping up.
Good.
Thank you for
Yay.
joining in, and please comment. We'll be back next Wednesday at 1 o'clock.
And don't forget we're on YouTube.
And we are on YouTube.
YouTube channel.
You could go to Exit the Maze podcast on YouTube. You could also go to the ATC network on YouTube. It's on both channels. And certainly you could find us through Donna's Facebook page and my Facebook page and everywhere else. But if you'd like to be a guest on the show and like to contribute something to living healthier and especially if it's got something to do with mental health and addiction, we certainly would like that. But whatever it might be, we'd certainly like to entertain that. Being happy is not limited just to people who are sober. It's for everybody. So, Donna, always a pleasure.
Likewise.
I want to thank everybody for joining us. And until next time, this is Scott Jones and Dr. Donna Marks saying you all take care and see you around.